Back in the early 70s, the university I attended had a fun fair on campus. They went all out, even hiring a real carnival with rides, sideshows, game booths, and inevitably, carnies to run this all. They also advertised for temporary workers at a pretty good hourly rate. Being one of those students that always needed ready cash, I applied and was hired to start right away. I sold tickets for the sideshow attractions, worked at a food stall or two, and generally had a decent time. However, the last night, I was assigned to sell tickets to one of the more popular rides called the Salt and Pepper Shakers. 2 egg-wired shaped cages, one on each end of a long arm, would circle like a Ferris wheel. The cages would rotate as they rose and fell, turning the passengers upside down, inside out, and every which way. The ticket booth was located directly in front of the ride, and limited space meant it was pretty close to the spinning cars. After the third puke shower of the night, I was really regretting taking this gig. The roof protected me for the most part, but a bit of splatter found its way in, and I kept moving closer to the wire front of the booth to keep me from contacting the gunk running down the back wall. Suddenly, a huge white face popped up at the corner of the wire, startling me and making me recoil, right up against the nasty back wall. The clown face in front of me, already grinning, began shrieking with laughter. "Gotcha!" he shouted. I wasn't sure whether to laugh, cry, or add to the puke pile. Probably all three. My back was sticky, and I knew that. This really pissed me off. I lifted one hand and shook it at the clown. "Not funny, you asshole!" He stopped laughing immediately and thrust his white face even closer. He snarled a bit and repeated, "Asshole? Asshole?" I straightened up and began to stammer, "Sorry, but..." He grabbed the wire and began to shake the booth. "I'll show you an asshole." This booth, like all of the carnival gear, was designed for rapid construction and even faster teardown. The flimsy panels began to buckle and separate, and he actually got a hand inside, groping for me. "What the fuck are you doing?" I screamed. He was just reaching with an expression that scared me shitless. It was evil. The only possible weapon was the cheap cash box that I had been issued, but I grabbed it and started smacking at his hand anyway. His face got even more angry, and he threw his shoulder into the front of the booth. If it went over, I was exposed. I began screaming as loud as I could for help. I was in the middle of a college campus, full of people, but no one responded. There had to have been people waiting for the ride. Where were they? There was a skanky carny who operated the ride. Where was he? The booth kept shaking, tipping, and rocking. Suddenly, I remembered something from a self-defense lecture somewhere and shouted, "Fire! Fire!" The clown backed off. Eyes darting left and right, he let go of the booth and backed away slowly. The carny operator came from around the back of the booth and peered in through the front wire. "What fire?" I couldn't answer at first. I just waved in the direction of the clown who kept backing up into the darkness. "That jerk was trying to break into the booth," I finally managed to say. The carny turned, looked, then looked back at me. "What jerk?" I looked out into the midway and said, "That clown guy." I could not see him through the booth's lights and shadows. The carny shrugged and went back to stop the ride, which he had left running. Once he had offloaded the greenish people, he came back to the booth. "You say a clown tried to break into the booth?" "Yeah. I called him an asshole when he startled me, and he freaked out, shaking the booth and trying to tip it over. You didn't see all that?" "Nope. Watching the ride like I have to do. But no clowns here. Never had clowns in this carnival." Maybe it was just a drunk frat boy with a bad attitude. Maybe it was the carny closing ranks with his brother in sleaze. Maybe something else entirely. All I know is that no one in the office knew anything about a clown with anger management problems. In fact, they strenuously denied knowing anything about a clown and basically ordered me to forget about it, say nothing to anyone, and take my payoff roll of quarters with which was to wash my pukey clothes. I decided right then and there that clowns are an unnecessary evil, to be avoided at all costs, and if anyone ever gets around to passing a law against clowns, they'll get my vote early and often. I was 8 when this event took place, and it happened at a carnival that my uncle and aunt took me to. My Uncle Rick was a captain in the military as a military police officer at the Lackland Air Force Base. His uncle was the sheriff in a small town in Texas. I was staying with them because my parents had just had a newborn baby boy and wanted to have one less child to worry about. It was a late summer day in Texas, and my aunt and Uncle Rick wanted to take their children to a carnival that was in town. I had just turned 8, and I was the youngest of the group. My older cousin Kyle was 15, my cousin Anna was 13, and I, as mentioned earlier, being the youngest. When we drove up, I was fascinated by all the lights and sound and the smell of the carnival food. We were there for about an hour when my uncle saw his uncle all dressed in his police uniform. My uncle was in civilian clothes, but his sidearm was somewhere on him. I wanted to go to the Ferris wheel, while my cousins wanted to go to the roundup, so my aunt volunteered to take me to the Ferris wheel, and my uncle took my cousins to the roundup. As we were walking, I noticed this man dressed in a clown suit that was following my aunt and me. Every time I would turn around, he would be walking behind us. I pulled on my aunt's sleeve and said, "Auntie, that clown is following us." My aunt turned around, and the clown saw her look at him, and he immediately turned around and walked away. She then took me by the arm and dragged me to find my uncle. We made a wrong turn and ended up in a walkway between the tents and booths. The walkway was almost abandoned, and it was really dark. While dragging me by the arm, my aunt ran down this walkway trying to find a way out. Suddenly, there was a voice that came out of the dark and said, "You look lost, and your little boy looks nice." My aunt turned around to see who had said that, and it was the clown that was following us. I saw something shiny in the clown's hand, and it looked like a knife. My aunt pushed me through a slit in one of the tents, and she followed. The guy in the tent looked shocked, because we ended up in the middle of a game where you would play for stuffed animals. The guy in the tent looked at my aunt and asked what was wrong. My aunt told him the whole story about the clown that was following us with a knife, and the guy had this odd look on his face like he didn't believe her. My aunt then picked me up and threw me over the counter. My Uncle Rick happened to walk by at that same moment, and after my aunt made it over the counter, she started to cry, and through her tears, she told him what happened. My uncle got this furious look on his face, and it is one that I will never forget. While my aunt was telling him this, someone else got one of the police officers that was walking by. The officer radioed to my Uncle Rick's uncle who was walking around. When more police officers arrived, my aunt and I gave my uncle a description, and he told my aunt to go to the truck and drive home. One of the officers escorted my aunt, my cousins, and me back to the truck. Both my uncle and the police did a search of the whole carnival, and questioned every clown at the carnival, but they didn't find the clown that had been stalking my aunt and me. Later that night, my uncle came home and told us that a boy had went missing at the carnival that night, and he was last seen with a clown. There were rumors around town that the clown was a local man that lived on the outskirts. The police searched his property, but found nothing. Though nothing was found, people were really weary around him when he came into town. They still have not found the boy, or the clown. I'm 28 now, and even though this event happened 20 years ago, I still cannot look at a clown, or a sign for a carnival, without having a cold feeling and a shiver go down my spine. And I still hear the words clearly as that night, "You look lost, and your little boy looks nice." That was the last time my aunt and uncle took my cousins to a carnival. If it wasn't for my aunt's quick thinking, and being fast on her feet, I don't believe I would be alive today. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate if you left a like, shared it with your friends, and subscribed for future content. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check the description for information on how to submit your stories. I really want to give a big thank you to everyone helping support the channel. We wouldn't be closing in on 100,000 subscribers without you all, and I want to thank you. For those of you that decided to unsubscribe because I released a 3-minute video on Sunday for a competition, even though I released 90 minutes of scary story footage, Your loss. I like to think I'm the channel that actually pumps out the most content on a regular basis, and if someone wants to leave because I posted a 3-minute video, after already uploading over 300 other videos of scary stories, strictly because I couldn't upload it at private and I had to use that stupid clickbaity title, then I'm sorry to say, I think your Maker Militia will go on without you. For those of you that were able to read a title and know that that's not a video you probably wanted to watch and understood that I, like most people, like to have fun, I really appreciate that and it means a lot to me, and you guys are the reasons I do giveaways. I really can't thank you all enough for your support, and it's really sad to see people go over such a stupid reason, but honestly, after working 20 hours this weekend, my wife and I decided to sit down and have a little fun, so I spent about 8 hours editing that video. I also wanted to put out there that I'm looking for more stories for our journey across the states. Eventually, I would like it to span across the whole world, so what I need from all of you guys is to help me get stories from every state. I'm trying to find some really creepy stories to represent every state as we make our way through this horror trip. I've been seeing a lot of recommendations for Illinois, but I only have like 1 or 2 stories from that area, so I'm always looking for more so I can pick the best ones. So if you have a story that you would like to share to help represent your state, I would really appreciate you sending it in. And if you don't, I would really appreciate if you asked around, so that way we have a great selection to cover the entire world. Once again, I really appreciate all your support, and I hope you have a great day. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.